you there? Can you hear me? the standard Zoom intro. Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. You got me? Anyway, I'm here. What do you want to ask me?
Yeah. What time is it there to start with? It's about eight, just after 8, is it?
Yeah, just after 8. You can probably still hear my kids. They're on school holidays, but they're upstairs and
Causing trouble.
I told them to go to bed, but they won't. Yeah.
Let's get those kids. You want to get them trained.
Yeah,
oh, mate.
Yeah, I'm working on it.
I wanted to have a short video with Anthony and I, just to introduce us and introduce you, the legend, the man behind the beard, to everybody on the bumper crew. Anthony knows his stuff when it comes to composting toilets. So he runs the largest online shop for composting toilets and grey water management in Australia. It's pretty impressive. So he really does know his stuff. He's an environmental engineer by trade, by training, and he's been working in off-grid sites doing grey water and composting toilets for ages. So I wanted to just introduce him to everybody, show you what I've been up to in the background, and who will be the distributor for Australia. So yeah, good to have you on board, Anthony. Do you want to tell us a bit more about how you got into the business and how you got here and how you built up Water Wally?
No, I think you've sort of covered it, but I guess in summary, yeah, I finished my studies way back in whatever that was. I think it was 2000 that I finished my environmental engineering, and then travelled around on a lot of self-sufficient properties and a lot of off-grid sort of remote properties, working on like farms and that sort of thing. And that's where I really sort of got an understanding for those people and their need for conserving water and being resourceful with the water that they had. And that was sort of where the idea first sparked, I guess. And then, one thing led to another, and it wasn't actually a conscious decision to run this business. It was a bit of an accident, really. So, but anyway, here we are.
Yeah, sounds like me. I didn't leave my previous job and go, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start a business making toilets.
No.
Never had that on my dreams.
I was actually doing landscape gardening, and that sort of led on to water-wise gardening, and that led on to doing grey water recycling, and then my background in environmental engineering started playing a role and doing the work with the composting toilets. So it's been an evolutionary process.
Cool. How is water scarcity in Australia? I know we all think of it as a hot place and there's a big desert somewhere there, and you've had the bushfires a few years ago, but how scarce is water, especially in rural places? How do they get it in the first place?
Australia's a pretty big country, as you know, and so the answer to that question varies a lot depending on where you are and depending on seasonal rainfalls and all that sort of stuff. So, I guess if you're in the city, it is one of those things that people don't put much thought to because they don't need to. You turn on a tap and the water comes out, and it seems like an endless supply. I know over here we're in Western Australia, and I know that a lot of most of Perth's water supply is quite energy intensive. So a lot of it comes from desalination and stuff like that. So, we're lucky that we're in, I guess, pretty well off country where we can afford as a nation or as a state to run those desal plants. Otherwise, we'd be in trouble. I don't think we'd have the water in Western Australia to support the population that's here. There's not the surface waters to support the
Yeah.
population. Yeah, so it's
That's cool,
technology. It's technology basically that is allowing this population to be here and support
yeah,
it. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. I mean, I'm still learning about the sort of sanitation and water systems around the world, and I didn't realize you were using desalination. I've heard it's pretty energy intensive, but it seems like a lot of sanitation and water systems in developed countries especially are really energy intensive. um,
yeah,
it's quite surprising when you realize that. um, and in terms of like, one of the biggest users, I'm learning it, one of the biggest users is industry. So
yeah,
houses, flushing toilets are like 50% or something stupid of the water in houses. You correct me on that, but even industry, they use water, but don't you get quite lazy about what you put back into it. So a lot of the sort of grey water sewerage issues are actually around removing industrial pollutants from the water rather than anything organic that come out of people or anything else. So it's quite, I've still come to learning all about that, but it's
yeah. Industry waste is a whole new, a completely different ball game. It's yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
its own beast to manage. A lot different to domestic or residential wastewater, which is relatively easy to manage with organic loadings and stuff like that. But industrial waste has all sorts of weird and wonderful
nasty.
pollutants and stuff like that, which are
Yeah.
really, really difficult to treat and get out of the water stream.
Yeah, it's quite interesting when since getting into compost closet and starting compost closet, you suddenly become conscious about everything that goes down a drain. And paint, what do you do with paint thinners? What do you do with old paint? Normally it's like, oh yeah, you just swill it down the drain. You're like, well, someone's got to go and get it out the water so that it can go back into the water course. Otherwise it's just in the ocean. it's
Yeah,
it's like it's really brutal what people do.
yeah. Well, I was telling you recently, hey, that I I was presenting at that conference
Oh
in
yeah.
Perth. And I was talking about composting toilets, but there was other presenters there, and a guy who I do a lot of work with, Sam Milani's his name. He's a bit of a guru in grey water management, in grey water treatment and stuff like that. And he was doing a bit of a presentation about his stuff and was talking about how the increased um, uptake. So a lot of people in Australia are moving towards being resourceful with grey water and reusing it, and because of that, it's like a consumer-driven change. So because a lot of people are wanting to use their grey water on their gardens, they need grey water-friendly products, and because there's that demand for it, there's a lot more grey water-friendly products on the market than there was a few years ago. And it wasn't something that I was aware of, but apparently Australia is a bit of a leader in that. So compared to America, for example, it's a lot harder to find grey water friendly products because there hasn't been that as much of that consumer driven demand. So
Yeah,
that it's
Australia are quite smart in that case. Like you guys do seem a bit ahead of the curve. Like you've got the more regulations on toilets. So yeah, kudos on that one. That's
yeah, it was just an interesting off spin of it. It was obviously not the intention of people to be to making these grey water systems to change the laundry liquid industry, but it happened that way. And that's a good thing, not just for people who want to use their grey water on their gardens, but it's also a good thing for other larger wastewater management providers and like town sewage treatments, because if they get less of those chemical shitstorms coming down the drain and they get more natural products coming down the drains, it's much easier and more cost effective for them to manage that as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
it's
Absolutely.
it's been a real win-win.
It gives you hope. Like people have a lot more influence than they think. If their choices really do have a massive impact. So it's pretty cool. that's pretty inspiring. So yeah, another thing I had to ask you, other than what beer are you on? What's that?
This is actually beer number 1, and this is the local beer of choice.
Emu. That is awesome. Oh,
It's Emu Export. Oh, and this is my stubby holder too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Safe water drink beer. Loving it, mate. Who did the original designs for Water Wally?
Oh, there's actually a guy in Romania, believe it or not.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah, the guy I got chatting with. He was actually playing in a metal band and did like artwork for his band and other metal band like album covers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I got onto him and asked if he wanted to draw some frogs for me, and he did.
Strange question. Could you draw us a couple of frogs? All right.
Yeah.
Not bad. I'm up in Scotland at the moment, so I got some that way. Scottish beer. Pretty good.
Good one, eh?
It's an IPA, but I haven't. They're lying. Your Emu Export. I'd be buying that. I just can't seem to get my mittens on it. They're not exporting it.
No, it's not an export. we keep it for ourselves. we only export Fosters, you know.
It's my other go-to, as you know. That's pretty cool, man. The other one is gone.
I was going to say, can you tell us a bit about how you got into doing Cuddy and that, how that all happened?
Yeah, so I left my job about a year ago now, just over a year ago. Converted a van, and I thought, you know what, it's a pandemic, terrible time to leave work, but reasons being, I just wanted a break, and thought if we get a camper van and we travel around, if everything goes wrong, we can always drive home. That was the theory. So we converted a van, and it was my girlfriend who said, hey, why don't we put a composting toilet in it? And I'm like, okay, sure. And then I looked into it and I was like, hey, we can stay off grid for these things. Like, they don't use water. That means you can go and stay and explore more and not have to be constantly going back into town. So we got, the usual market leader, and you will definitely have heard of them. But I was blown away by how cool they are for vans, but I was not impressed with like the design. It's one of those ones that you have to like disassemble just to take it apart and empty it, and it's easier to do that outside, so you end up lugging like the whole thing out, and just that led to an itch. And I was like, these things are so cool, and I know more people would use them if they were just smaller and easier. So I was sitting there, lying in bed in the van, sketching away toilets as you do when you've got an itch to scratch and you're killing time in the bed in the morning. And then that led to, I wonder if we could actually get this made, I wonder if we could run a crowdfunding campaign to help this happen. Yeah, it was kind of one of those pipe dreams that kind of went a little bit too far, and then you're like, no, we're doing this, guys. I'm off. I'm making toilets. And it's been cool. It's been really cool. And that's what led me into learning loads about the sewer system and the potential and the problems that are not just like developing world problems around access to safe sanitation, but even in the Western countries, the problems around water management and the energy it consumes, and what do they do with all that stuff, the sludge that comes down the pipes? They've got to do something with it, and that's a really big problem that's going to be 7.2 billion people strong in a few years time. So there's some real work that needs to be done, and at the moment we're saying, like, let's just do camper vans. If we can just make people realize how cool they are when they've got the other benefits of staying off grid and saving water, then the potential is there to say, look, yeah, put one in your house, man, they're awesome.
Yeah, well, I think there's potential for that, the camper van or someone on the road, for that to be a bit of a starting point on a journey, pardon the pun, where like you're needing to make a choice about obviously you can't have a standard flushing toilet in your camper van, caravan, whatever, and you've got to look at a waterless or an alternative. And you know, if they can use something that is environmentally friendly, and if you can show them that, you know, that it's not the whatever you call it, you know, there's a bit of a probably misunderstanding or misconception of what a toilet like this can be like. And if people can see that and realise that actually, no, it doesn't stink and it's actually not so bad to use, then potentially it could lead on to other aspects of using it at home or whatever else as well, you know.
It's weirdly, it's been a little bit of like pressure just from like, hey, I'm trying to build like the gateway toilet here, to like sort of opening this up to wider adoption. You're like, don't cock it up, Richard, you know, don't fuck it up. Make sure you build a really good toilet that doesn't smell, that's really easy to use, so that people then actually want to use them. Because if you build a terrible toilet, the people go, yeah, that thing was awful, I'm never having one of them in my house.
Well, that's right, and it is an issue because there are lots of terrible toilets on the market, and there's a lot, even, you know, ones that aren't on the market, you know, there's lots of people that have had terrible experiences with waterless toilets or other sorts of non-conventional toilets, and that's a mindset that will take a lot to change. So
Yeah,
I think you're totally right. You know, if you're going to get involved, you've got to make sure that it's solid. It's not going to give people troubles, and people are going to be happy to use it. You know, it's really critical.
Speaking of very interesting toilet, shall we say, I found I'm going to say scariest on Alibaba the other day. I'm always trying to keep my eye out for competitors, and this one was terrifying. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to show you the link for the video, but it was almost like an abstractation of what it would be like to use this thing, and it was fucking terrifying. It's so good. It was spinning, and there was like chocolate fondant going everywhere. It was fucking weird.
That's sweet.
It's so good. I'll put a link in whenever we share this video. It's gold. But good on them, man. They're giving it a whirl, but not for me. They should have crowdfunded that one. They'd have been told, yeah, no, I'm not using that.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting thing for you too. Hey, going down the crowdfunding path and getting support for what you're doing before you're even doing it, sort of.
Yeah, it's the scariest thing, and I've had knots in my stomach for days. Like, it's terrifying. You're launching a product. The upfront costs of launching it are huge. I've got loads of capital on the line, and so having that crowdfunding to put it out there and say, do you actually want this, guys, is really reassuring. And some of the feedback we've had was awesome. Like, when someone writes you a letter, just an email, and they just go, guys, thank you so much for making this. You're like, okay, good. There's demand. Hey, share, like, investors, like, people want this thing. That's really, really cool. And it's an experience in itself, doing a crowdfunding campaign.
So now the pressure's on, you know, you've made the promises. Now you deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. It's it's really exciting, and it's if we make another one, whether I'll do it again. I'm not sure. I think we would. I think we definitely would. But it's not easy. It's been a lot of work.
Yeah,
but it's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting times. It's got to be said. I'm really glad that we've got you on board. I think it's going to be really cool having your expertise in Australia and some boots on the ground, because having somebody to actually answer questions and a face to the name, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, the same goes. You know, like I said to you before, that for me and for us with Water Wally, we've really mostly had a focus on domestic or more permanent composting toilets, and haven't really sort of played in that mobile home sort of, that side of where they can be used. So yeah, it's going to be interesting for us too.
Yeah. Have you got any other videos in the pipeline? You mentioned you got loads to edit just before.
Oh yeah, I've got heaps of videos in the pipeline.
For our crew, like Water Wally's YouTube channel is gold. There are some cracking funny videos on there. Go check them out. And some of the projects that you've done look absolutely spectacular. Some beautiful places.
Yeah, we've definitely done some interesting projects over the years. It's been a hard slog. Like running this business is certainly there's definitely easier ways to make a living. It's a lot of work, but there has been some perks. Like we've done some pretty amazing jobs in some pretty amazing places, and met some awesome people too. Like the sorts of people that are doing these things and trying to be a bit more eco-friendly with whatever development they're doing. It's been really interesting with all that side of it.
Cool, man. Right. Anybody who's watching, go and check it out now. We'll put a link wherever we put a link. Erica will sort that out. She's the brain behind all that stuff. But yeah, it's good to catch up again, mate. And we'll have another catch up soon, hopefully.
Yeah, look.
Oh, the fam. Oh. Right on cue. Look at that. Oh. Oh, bedtime, I think.
Yeah, bedtime. All right, cool, man. Well, yeah, good chatting with you, hey? Oh, you just cut out, so that was good timing. I don't know if you can hear me, but oh yeah, I got you again.
Yeah, you got me again. We lost you briefly. All right, man. That might be a cue to call it a night. Call it a day. Call it a night. But yeah, great chatting again, mate. And we'll catch up again soon. Cheers, buddy.
Have a good one. See ya.